What's up, Rockstars? Today I'm going to tell you about how Kickstarter board games are about to change in a major way. Big change coming up. Let's talk about it. Now, as you know, I gotta start out every video thanking my patrons and YouTube members because it is through their financial support that this channel is possible. If you appreciate all of the content that I produce for you and it's helpful for you in any way, please consider going ahead and checking the link in the description below. Even giving $1 a month through Patreon helps out a great deal, and I greatly do appreciate it. If not though, that's fine too. Simple like on the video or a comment saying that this video was helpful obviously is helpful for me because it knows I'm making the right stuff, because at the end of the day, these videos are for you guys. So let's get right into it. As you might know, I've made a bit of a fuss about make games not campaigns. And a lot of what I meant by that is that it seems like there are companies out there that want to just make campaigns, because at the end of the day, it's the campaign that makes the money. And then they kind of begrudgingly make a game. Like, I've had companies like, oh, you want an index? Like, well, I mean, yeah, you're making a board game. Make an index in the rulebook. Like, it shouldn't be a bother or a chore to make the board game part of it, right? Like, you can spend all your, you want an intro video? Like, nobody says that, right? They're fine making all the art and, so there's been a big focus on launching a whole bunch of campaigns and then kind of slowly actually releasing the games that come with them, supposedly, right? And so we see stuff with like 3-4 year delays sometimes, even with this. Well, that's going to be a lot harder to do because Kickstarter is changing the rules. Or maybe they'll all just go to GameFound, and GameFound can be the spam central of that. I don't know. Be interesting to see how this goes. So I'm going to go ahead and read this in full, and then we'll kind of discuss. So it says, can I run more than one project at once? We don't permit running multiple projects at the same time or launching a second project before fulfilling your first one. Having multiple live projects can confuse backers and split support. Moreover, running a project is a lot of work, and having more than one live project will likely dilute your attention and energy. We do, however, allow experienced creators in good standing to launch and manage a certain number of projects back to back, within and depending on the category they have experience in on the site. We consider a creative to be experienced once they have completely fulfilled at least 4 projects. What is good standing? A creator is considered to be in good standing when they have demonstrated they can abide by our rules and community guidelines, present their projects honestly and clearly, and fulfill their campaigns to a high standard. This means maintaining regular, open, and honest communication with backers and delivering rewards as promised. Creators who fail to fulfill outstanding projects do not maintain transparent communication with backers or violate any other Kickstarter rules are no longer considered to be in good standing. These creators will lose their overlapping fulfillment privileges or other applicable site privileges. How many projects can I run to back to back as an experienced creator in good standing? Design and technology creators, doesn't apply to us, so I'm going to skip that. Publishing and comic creators, I'll go and say that because we have seen some companies use comics to get another campaign out, kind of like a soundtrack. May launch and manage up to 6 unfulfilled projects back to back. So it'll be interesting to see who plays this is a comic or this is a soundtrack versus this is a board game. Creators in all other categories may launch and manage up to 3 unfulfilled projects back to back in their respective categories, e.g. games, food, dance, etc. Creators may only use their overlapping fulfillment privileges in categories where they have a demonstrated track record of fulfillment experience, which means they need 4 in each of those categories that they are wanting to do it in. So to do the comic, you'd have to have 4 other comics to be in good standing. Creators who have already reached the maximum number of unfulfilled projects will have to fulfill previous projects in order to be approved for future launches. How can it be considered for overlapping fulfillment privileges? There is no application process. The trusted safety team will assess a creator for overlapping fulfillment during submission review for their next project. Okay. Let's break that down. So fundamentally, I'm going to focus on that last part first so that everybody's on the same page, because I don't know if everybody knows this, but you can't just launch a Kickstarter. You actually have to essentially submit it for review, and then Kickstarter approves it. that's an interesting note, and I sometimes get on Kickstarter because you'll see some stuff that's like obviously a scam, like people selling Blood Rage minis and Kingdom Death minis and so, like stuff like that. And if you see it on Kickstarter, that means it was approved. If it's not a preview, like if it's actually launched, that means Kickstarter approved it. And that's a manual process. Somebody has to look at that and say, yeah, this is good. And they're not the best at that. So that's kind of a blanket statement going into all this is obviously rules are only rules when they are enforced, right? And so when it comes to getting Kickstarter approved, I've had some companies that are legitimate companies struggle. And I've had some companies, obviously, that are scams release multiple. So I've seen those Blood Rage minis 3 times. So it just kind of, I guess, depends on the reviewer you get for your campaign page. But you have to submit it for approval. Kickstarter says, yes, this is good to go. You can launch with this. It's to make sure you have at least a baseline information. They have kind of required information you have to fill out nowadays and stuff like that. But again, depends on who you get. So a blanket statement there. It is important to note that you have to have the 4 fulfilled in the category you want. And so, as we've seen before, companies have used soundtracks to actually just do a warehouse sale, right? Kamon's done it, or any kind of digital thing. Dimension Games has done it, I believe. A lot of companies have, right? I think Darkgate Games did it as well. So essentially you have backstock, right, that you want to sell. And you want to sell it through Kickstarter. Well, Kickstarter doesn't allow you to sell anything that's pre-made. And so what you do is you have a soundtrack that you're making that then you use that soundtrack to really sell all the other stuff. And it's not really about the soundtrack at all. Comics are another good way of doing that. There's a few different ways you can kind of create something, but the main focus is something else. However, you need, like, to do the 6 for comics, you need 6 or 4 others to have already delivered. So it's not something you can easily bypass or sidestep either. It'll be really interesting to see, I guess, how well this is included. Now, I do want to have a quick talking point about delivery. So or fulfillment, I guess I should say. It's incredibly hard, and by that I mean almost impossible, to truly mark something as fulfilled. And I guess I should explain that. I mean, you can set some rules there, but at the end of the day, it's making a board game with thousands of pieces and mini boxes, and then delivering it to thousands of people across the entire world into multiple countries, perhaps on multiple waves, is a tall order. It's definitely a complex thing, even if you get it mostly right. So let's say that all the boats land on all the continents or on the same month even. So every continent got a ship in their docks. And then, of course, they all have to go through some customs, which different countries are at different lengths. And then they have to go to whatever hub is distributing them. By the time that's happened, I imagine the people in China have already done a local pickup order from the factory, or, whatever distribution they're doing there, or even like by train and stuff like that. There's a big, long, complex order about that. There have been companies who have gotten to the port, gotten to customs, and then had to turn around, go all the way back to China. This was IDW because of a lack of warning signs on their kid-looking board games, because they couldn't put a sticker there. Put a sticker on it, then ship it all the way back. That's like 2 months each way, right? And then finally go through customs and do that. So I got the Joan of Arc batch that I got was one of those like 6 months late ones that I got literally like half a year later. So defining when fulfillment's done, because let's say even you delivered it to every single backer. There was no lost mail, which happens. There was no wrong addresses, which happens. There was no return backs, which happens, and all that. Everybody got their game. How long do you wait to see if people actually got it? There are board gamers right now. Some of you probably have stuff unwrapped, which means you've never opened it up, which means you don't know if you need replacement parts. For all you know, there's not even all the pieces are there. oftentimes we'll open up a box and there'll be 2 of the same mini when there should be 2 different minis, right? It happens. Stuff like that is, oh, I'm missing this, I'm missing that. Replacement here, replacement there. When is it done? When are you fulfilled? And how do you even track that? How do you define that? That's a very, and notice they don't dive into that at all. It sounds kind of like they'll make a judgment call. Which is honestly probably the best way you can do it, to be honest. Obviously, I think as a creator, you definitely need to be tracking this and have proof of things. But yeah, it's a tall order to define something is fulfilled. Checkbox, completely done with that game forever. And in fact, you'll see in a lot of old campaigns, there will be, 3 people still commenting years later, I never got a replacement. I never got this. I never got that. So is it fulfilled or is it not? What's the threshold? Is it 1% that still have issues? 2%? 13 people? 14 people? Like, I don't want to make that line. That's for sure. So yeah, delivery can be multiple months long and can extend for potentially years, especially when it comes to wave 1, wave 2. If you delivered wave 1, is that fulfillment? Maybe they never get wave 2. Is that okay? Is Kickstarter fine with delivering part of a product but not quite finishing all of it? At the end of the day, isn't that almost kind of what Kickstarter's about? It's like, oh man, I'm trying to do this big thing. And, we never got the think like a video game, right? The funds on Kickstarter. Some have launched very different from when it first went on, right? Some of our board games are doing that. Trudvang Legends is completely changing. What the game you get is not the game that you backed. At one point that becomes a thing. I don't know. Maybe they didn't get that. Oh, you know what? We never got Solo to work. It just wasn't good. We didn't deliver it. That's fine. Or we weren't happy with the story and we don't want to give you something that's bad. So this is non-narrative now. I know we said narrative before. So is that fulfilled? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, it's super complex and super difficult. But regardless, the focus from Kickstarter to actually deliver what you promised is, I think, a great thing. I really think it is. I know that some companies are going to be upset about it. Some companies are going to like that and whatever. That's fine. It's really forcing, I think, people that are on Kickstarter to really focus on what Kickstarter is for and what it's best at. I have spoken with some companies that launch multiple campaigns that are very much starting to look at Kickstarter this way, right? Where it's like, look, not everything we make needs to be on Kickstarter. It's definitely ideal to have these kind of bigger things go. That being said, I think a lot of companies try to do 1 a quarter, these bigger ones, right? Which there's 4. So unless you're delivering games yearly, within a year, you can do that. Now, this brings up the potential of micro campaigns, right? That is a way around it. So as long as you have only 3 big ones or 2 big ones out at any time, right? You can do all sorts of micro ones fairly easily. What I think the overall push from this will be is that games will be farther along in development. So some games are pretty much done and ready. And I get prototypes like that too, where it's like, this is the game, just, it's not manufactured yet. All they need, they are completely done with balancing. I'll get prototypes with stretch goals in them. Okay. I mean, they're like done. They just need to be made. Okay. Or then we get stuff like Claustrophobia 1643 that's literally even pre-made and just needs to kind of recoup the cost and ship it out. Right. So there's a lot of potential for quicker delivery. But these kind of like really early on, we haven't developed this, we're not ready here, we're not done there, kind of dies down with this for at least the bigger companies. Now there are going to always be that authentic Kickstarter experience with those like, super indie people that are just really trying to make it. But yeah, this is definitely a push against lots of campaigns and slow fulfillment. And I think overall a good thing. There's definitely some negative there. Right. And I'm fine admitting that, especially as a consumer, right? Who at the end of the day just wants cool games. But I think overall it's the right mentality to have of you make a campaign, you for a game, you then make the game and you deliver the game. It's a very simple equation that we get, flustered up with multiple dev teams and all this and all that kind of stuff. And really Kickstarter is saying you can calm down there by using us. Definitely, though, an interesting take when there's a higher competition than ever before with GameFound. Board Games, I don't know if you knew or not, but is one of the major contributors to Kickstarter. Literally, like, that is one of their main things. They are very focused on board games because board games is one of their big ones. It's one of their most well known for, and especially when it comes to the legitimacy of Kickstarter. If you look at video games and technology, Kickstarter can get kind of shady, right? Board games in general are a very safe bet on Kickstarter. You have a much higher chance of success there, much higher. The numbers are definitely in there. They've shared them before with board gamers for that reason. Very, very much safer and legitimizes the whole company. So for them to kind of crack down on campaigns that are generally being delivered and doing well on board games, kind of really interesting there. And then of course you have GameFound, which is kind of getting bigger and bigger and bigger as more people kind of go over there, right? And so it's an interesting time to implement this. But again, overall, I think it's the right decision. I think it's a good mentality to have. If you go into a Kickstarter thinking about your game and not your campaign, I think you're actually thinking about the right thing. Not that the campaign isn't important. Of course, the campaign's important. But at the end of the day, you're not a company that makes campaigns. You're a game that makes board games, and you should focus on that. So I'm all for it. I would love to hear what you think about this, especially when you think about some companies that use Kickstarter in ways that would not fit this, even in good standing. I think we have quite a few to pick from, and I would love to discuss with you what you think will happen. So yeah, Kickstarter is going to change. The board game scene on there is going to change. This will force change. Some of it just by the numbers, some of it by tactics and marketing and mentality, and some of it perhaps in actually delivering the freaking game that you promised. So either way, guys, thank you so much for watching. There are a whole bunch of cool campaigns actually that just launched today. I'll go and link down to a few of those as well down there too. You'll find it right underneath that like button that you can also press while you're down there. Guys, have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you guys again really soon because I just got the Harakiri prototype. So that'll be next. All right. See you guys.